third part of M. Night Shyamalan's superhero trilogy has finally arrived. But after 19 years of hype, how does it stack up? Well, that's the subject of this episode, because today, Dave knows the movie Glass. Now, this review will be broken down into two parts. First will be a spoiler-free review, and then later I'll get a little more in-depth. But for now, let's begin with that spoiler-free part. And I do have to say that one of the biggest positives of the film was, of course, James McAvoy's performance, which is a real shame though, because his character wasn't utilized as well as he was in Split. But that is understandable since he is sharing the spotlight with two other main characters. Speaking of which, I did like seeing these characters merge onto the big screen. It was really fun reconnecting dots and watching new links form, as well as seeing the references to the other two movies. And I also like seeing some of the reveals for how Mr. Glass's plans went down. But sadly, that was where the positives stopped. The movie somehow felt rushed and felt like it was dragging at the same time. At certain parts, we jumped from one major scenario to another without enough time to absorb it and without being told how things happened, especially when it would have clarified a lot. Then in other parts, they beat the premise into your head over and over again, trying to sell you something that is never going to fly no matter what they do, only to abandon the whole scenario in the blink of an eye. And another hardship for me with the film was that the three main characters either didn't have an emotional story arc or they just had a really uninteresting one. What did these characters learn in between films? How did the events of the last movie change them as people? How are the events of this film changing them as people? We really don't get any answers to these questions, and we really didn't even get them asked. Ultimately, it's ironic considering the theme of Unbreakable that Glass doesn't live up to its own potential. Alright, so that'll do it for the spoiler-free portion of this review. We're about to get into spoiler territory, so if you want to avoid any spoilers and see this film fresh, then stop this video right now and check out the rest after you see the movie Glass for yourself. Okay, so here we go. My biggest problem with the film was the ending. We waited 19 years to see the return of the two main characters of Unbreakable just for them to be killed off, plus killing off the Horde? Even if this is the final film in the franchise, which is what's being reported, it seems like a pretty poor way to bring these characters back by killing them off in an uninspired movie. And while we're at it, let's just speak more about that return and those emotional story arc attempts. The film suffers from having the journey of the characters resting on the supporting cast, Joseph Dunn, Mrs. Price, and Casey Cook, with the ending having the baton being passed down onto them. But the real main characters of the movie that we spend the most time with aren't part of this ride, so we never get any real character development. Like, why did Casey have a bond with Kevin? Was it Stockholm Syndrome? If that's so, that's a bad thing. It's a logical conclusion that many would draw that a victim should be fearful or even hate their own captor. But in this movie, it's the total opposite. She cares for him. Why? Give me a better explanation other than she just understands that he has a disorder and that she's a caring person, because I ain't buying it. And if there is a reason, it should at least be a good one and something encouraging. Don't tell me something like, oh, after living with her abusive uncle, she's just used to caring for terrible people. Let's give a positive reason for it, and not a Rihanna one. If Casey is going to be the future, then let's see that she is now a stronger, smarter, and better person since we last saw her at the end of Split. Then there's Elijah's mother. Similar situation. I understand that it's her son and all, but how has she reacted to finding out that he's a mass murderer? We never really found that out. It doesn't seem to have changed anything, and it should at least have a little bit of an impact. I mean, mass murderer and all? However, let's move on to Joseph Dunn, because he has seemingly grown a bit. First, I was pleasantly surprised to see the same actor playing the part, and I am cool with him being Bruce Willis's guy in the chair. But to avoid the disappointment of Red Dead Redemption 1, where we're stuck playing as John Marston's nowhere near as cool son, it would be nice if he got a little bit more character development, and that way we had a reason to root for him. Now, let's jump back to the beginning. I did like the whole cliche bad guy kidnaps cheerleaders and the hero has to stop them scene. Just like when Unbreakable, it's cool to see a low-key realistic filter on comic book tropes, but I wanted a lot more of that. Now, I understand that the film couldn't just keep ringing that bell over and over again for the entire movie. However, it ends really quickly, because as soon as the Overseer and the Beast fall out of that window and meet the Clover Society, everything changes, and not for the better. First, why is Dr. Staple just waiting out there for them with these lights that she somehow knows will cause the Horde to change personalities? And how did they know that Super Bruce Willis is super allergic to water? Which makes me double back to the end, because with the introduction of the Clover Society, that just raises a ton of questions that never get answered, and that is very problematic. First question, what are they called? Because I have no idea if they're called the Clover Society, I just think it sounds right, so I'm kind of doing some of the work for you, M. Night, so you're welcome. Another problem I have with them is their initial plan. If Dr. Staple's goal was to convince these guys that they weren't super and just delusional, then, well, we as an audience, We're never going to buy that. And if it indeed turned out to be true, then that would totally suck. So this was a no-win situation plot. We saw in previous movies and in the trailer for this movie and in the beginning fight scene that the Beast and David Dunn are extraordinary people, no questions asked. They fell out of a window and just got up like it was falling out of bed. Since we know that they really are super, the entire middle act was a complete waste of time. Even though David Dunn himself did question it, he really shouldn't have. And the fact that he did makes him kinda dumb. And in the end, we as an audience knew that this was never going to stick. Bruce Willis's character was the only survivor of that train accident. We know this. He didn't have a scratch on him, and he was never even sick in his entire life. And by the way, if you were going to pick a moment in David Dunn's life to serve as the moment that he couldn't cope with and where all of his delusions started, then maybe, just maybe, the end of his football career would have made more sense. Just throwing that out there. Oh, and also, I do want to know, Mr. Glass, he just breaks really easily and is super smart, so why does he qualify as a superhuman? Can someone explain that? In the end, I need more of that emotional hook that good M. Night movies have and bad ones don't. I need to connect with these characters, and I just didn't here. And its disappointing ending just echoes what is the culmination of the trilogy. A disappointment. Anyway, that's my review. What did you think of the movie Glass? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe right here to Dave Knows Comics. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.